So I have mentioned this team a few times in the past couple of weeks. I made one video about them with their center situation. This is me talking about the team as a whole, because the Indiana Pacers need to be talked about, as they are the third seed in an Eastern Conference that we all thought was pretty much going to be like a 4-team, maybe even just a 3-team race, depending on how you felt about the Bucks before the year started. The Pacers currently better than Philly, better than the Celtics. And they're only 2.5 games out from the 1 seed, and Victor Oladipo has missed a solid amount of time this season, and they were able to remain afloat even through all that. And the first thing I think we have to make note of is, while you could argue that he has been a bit of a disappointment on offense, defensively, Miles Turner is pretty damn legit. He was already one of the better rim protectors in the NBA for a minute, as his block shots have routinely been towards the top of the league. But I think now he's moving around more defensively. I think he's able to defend in space, defend the pick and roll, step up onto perimeter players, and he's not amazing. He's definitely not like the elite of the elite, but I think he is on the path to being that, and that's a big reason why Indiana has been the second best defensive team in the league this season. Another reason for it is that this team is just full of veterans. Between Oladipo and Bogdanovic and Thad Young and Corey Joseph and Domantas Sabonis, these guys all just kind of know how to defend. Like, I wouldn't consider any of them, besides Oladipo, to be a very good defender, but the combination of all of them with their size, and Nate McMillan, who, to give him credit, has really improved as a head coach, has allowed these guys to be so good. The one name I left out there was Darren Collison. He's maybe the worst perimeter defender on this team because he's small and just kind of blah defensively. But I don't think that kills them too much. I mean, perhaps teams could attack him in a playoff series or whatever, but as of right now, it's okay enough. And now I want to look at, can these guys stack up with the rest of the East? Oh, one thing, if we can talk about their offense a little bit more. Oladipo definitely carries a load for this team. Bogdanovic can go off the dribble sometimes. I wouldn't ask him to ISO or pick and roll too much, but he's able to do just enough for you. Sabonis rolls, alley-oops, and offensive rebounds works. Tyreke Evans has been a disappointment. His efficiency has been awful. He can't finish at the rim kind of at all. Thad Young, his jump shot comes and goes, and it's mainly been gone this season, but he does just enough in transition and occasionally going off the dribble and occasionally rolling to where it's all just enough. I mean, the big thing would still be if Miles Turner could shoot more threes, which he kind of has been doing lately. He's up to 2 threes a game, which I think is progress, because it's definitely something that is a little, well, it's not natural for him, I guess I would say. I mean, his last 5 games that he's played, I mean, he shot 4 threes against the Hawks, which could be seen as a big deal. He shot 6 against the Bucks. Anyway, if we can now move on to how they stack up. So I do want to focus on Miles Turner for a bit here, and Sabonis, I guess. While I don't think those two can play together, just because I don't know if the offense is going to be good, when they play individually, I think they can attack Brook Lopez at least, because the Bucks defense has been pretty legit this season, because it's a team-wide thing of swarming the ball handler, and also Giannis is amazing. But I do think these two could overwhelm Brook Lopez athletically. Not to say that I think Brook Lopez is like a quicksand center. I think he's a bit better than someone like Enes Kanter is, or like Greg Monroe or whoever. But he's not a lot faster than those guys either. And he's certainly not as athletic as Turner and Sabonis. And especially if he's matched up on Sabonis, I think the rebounding could get pretty rough. Now, granted, Giannis is the one who's on the boards the majority of the time for Milwaukee. But even then, I think Sabonis, if the rebounding is Sabonis versus Giannis, I don't think Giannis is going to win that every single time, for as much of an alien as he is. Also, if the Pacers want to use the Miles Turner pick and pops against Brook Lopez, that could be a thing as well. But even then, I do fear with Indiana, if Tyreke is not going to be that other guy who can create offense, they could have a really tough time scoring on the Bucks, because one thing with the Pacers is while they're a very good three-point shooting team in terms of percentage, they don't shoot too many. They're towards the bottom of the league in attempts, and I don't know if they're that comfortable just hoisting three after three after three. And the Bucks allow the most threes in the league because they swarm ball handlers like crazy. So is that going to force the Pacers to play a game that they don't really want to play? Is that going to force Thad Young to take like 3 threes a game when he really shouldn't be taking any at this point? I don't know. That'll be interesting. Also, is anybody going to be able to score consistently besides Oladipo against a swarming Bucks defense? I think some of these things could be said about the Raptors as well, because with just all the big defenders they have, I mean, if you put Kawhi on Oladipo, is that just going to kind of knock him back from being a real piece on offense and then nobody else can make up for it? That could be rough. Now, at the same time, a lot of these teams only have one big-time scorer, so the Pacers can do some of those things back to those teams, right, where, this is a really good defensive team, so perhaps they could load up on one star, force the other guys to beat them, and, if we're playing that game, then, I mean, in a funny world, you would think that Philly would be the team that could deal with that because they've got Embiid and Jimmy Butler, but they've got spacing problems and all that, so maybe the Celtics, because you think if Hayward is healthy, then between Hayward, Kyrie, and Tatum, one of those three is going to put up points consistently. I mean, hell, you got to include Marcus Morris at this point. The guy's dropping like 16, 17 a game on some pretty decent efficiency. So that'll be the interesting thing with Indiana's defense is, are they able to slow down an entire team? Are they able to slow down a star? I mean, up to this point, they've been able to slow down teams a lot of the time through just playing really fundamentally sound defense, which is awesome, but, when you're facing these superstar players, the Kawhis and the Giannis's and the Kyries of the world, it'll just be interesting to see if that number 2 defense can hold up. I mean, we saw with the Jazz that when they went up against a high-powered offense in Houston, they didn't look like a good defensive team at all. Now, are any of these teams in the East as good offensively as those Rockets? No, but at the same time, it's like the star power is still there. So maybe you play great defense on the Celtics and you're able to confuse Tatum and you have like Thad Young who can stay in front of Hayward and Bogdanovich is big enough to not allow like Jaylen Brown or Marcus Morris to really do much. But then Kyrie just makes like 9 threes and it's like, well, we lost that game. So, yeah, now they do have Oladipo for that, and that'll be the big thing is, can he be that amazing two-way player who can slow down Kyrie for 6 minutes and be the number 1 offensive player for this team? That's a lot to ask for. Maybe he can do it, maybe he can't. And I think everything I just said can kind of apply to each team, right? Like a big thing with the Raptors is, are they going to make threes in the playoffs between Siakam and OG and Ibaka, and Lowry's shooting has been up and down all season, so that could help out Indiana. It would be really interesting to see what they would do against Embiid. Would they choose to double team or not? Because the Celtics have had a pretty good amount of success with just trusting Horford to bother Embiid enough on the low block or Aaron Baines to where they don't bring the double, and it doesn't really allow Philadelphia's offense to do anything. Everybody's just kind of standing there. So would the Pacers double? I mean, a lot of that would just come down to Miles Turner. He's a big dude. He's 250 pounds. He's pretty strong. I think there's a chance he could actually not get killed by Embiid on the post, just possession after possession. And if that's the case, I think that could be step 1 towards giving the Sixers a lot of problems. And if Turner is going to be at least shooting the 16-footer consistently, that could bother Embiid as well, because as I say whenever I talk about Embiid, you space out the floor against the guy and you dare him to post up all game, the dude can get tired. So now, of course, it'll also be interesting to see in that type of thing if the Sixers find a way to force the Pacers to switch, because then, of course, Embiid's post-ups would be a lot easier. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into Indiana and all these teams. I think they would be really helping themselves out if they tried to get another offensive player around the deadline, because they tried to do it with Tyreek, and he's just not been good. His finishing around the rim has been pretty bad, and his threes are going in, so that's cool, but I think that would help him out a lot. And from then on, it's just doing what they do, playing really hard, playing the right way, shooting the right shots, and